Alex, you came to hear about Enterprise DevOps. Prepare to go, oh yeah. What I'd like to talk to you about, it's really so good to hear so many discussions today already about DevOps being much, much wider than engineering. Of course it is, like from its very inception it has been, and yet it does get pushed into that box. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is, what is DevOps at a strategic level? What can that mean? Where I came from, or why I'm standing here now. What our clients are doing, and what we CGI are doing. Hopefully these stories will be particularly interesting for you. Now I've forgotten to put a clicker on, so bear with me while I do this. There you go. Okay, so Dev and Ops. I've got my two girls there modelling the classic problem of Dev and Ops, and I'm just going to give myself some kudos for 2 seconds to get these. I always think of Luna there, the cat, being Dev, and Callie there, the Doberman, being the Ops. As you can see, I've got them to be very harmonious in their dealings with each other. But of course, DevOps is not just about Dev and Ops, is it? It's actually about the problem, the classic problem that we all started thinking about so many years ago, was it 2008? Was we visualised a wall of confusion between Dev and Ops, and we had to break that down. But of course there are walls of confusion between every single team, every single capability in an organisation. And so DevOps, I've always thought of it as being so much wider than that, as being a strategic thing. And so strategic DevOps, enterprise level DevOps, is about bringing all the capabilities together. As you can see, I've just stuck, I'll share these slides afterwards if you can't see properly. Some of them I will go through quite quickly, because just to level with you, when I got invited to speak today, my first thought was, they're giving me half an hour to talk about DevOps. And my second thought was, how do I fit this into half an hour? So I might have to go through some things quite quickly, but please talk to me afterwards. Please ask anything, look at my slides, get in touch anytime. As you can probably already tell, I'm not going to shut up about this topic anytime soon. So essentially what we do is take DevOps back to its guiding principles. So think about the Conf model being the things you have to consider in order to do DevOps, and the 3 ways being the 3 lenses that you can look at that through. And then I've got a list of all different capabilities across the top. It's not an exhaustive list. Think of all the capabilities in your organisation, all the capabilities that you would ideally bring together, all the people who actually have a part in that value stream, all the people who actually either deliver a thing or enable a thing, any people who are working together with other people to deliver a thing. The same principles can be applied to their work. So that's a sort of really quick summary of what Enterprise DevOps is. I'm going to loop back to that in a minute when I've told you how I've come to be here. So here we go. And you'll wonder why I've used certain pictures in many of these slides, and you may never know. But I know. There is a reason for this one. I did a degree in horses. The reason I did a degree in horses is because I don't know if anybody else relates to this in the room. When I was a really little kid, I had a Commodore 64, and I didn't really have any games. I just had a great big book that told me what to do. So I learned to code from a very early age. Got bored, thought, what happens if I put that comma there? What happens if I change this little bit? And sort of I actually got quite good at it. This is the sad, relatable bit, where I was sort of told, no, girls can't do that. And I literally didn't even have access to a computer for many years. So I didn't necessarily think I could do it. And the one degree I could think of that would keep my interest long enough was something with nice, lovely animals in it. So I did a degree in horses. However, after that, the tech bug was in me. all along. And when I actually sort of started doing, I actually became a marketing specialist as part of that degree. I took a couple of marketing jobs, and instead of actually doing any real marketing, I just became the techie one in the office who would fix the printer and connect that to that and sort out that file share, whatever. And I thought, do you know what? I may have done a bit of a swerve in my career, but I really am meant to work in tech. So I sort of took a support desk job, and yes, I actually, and don't get too excited when I say this, I supported pig farmers through the millennium bug. Autographs afterwards. So that was where I started my support desk, actually, for a genetic improvement company working with pig farmers. I did various IT manager and project manager jobs, started doing my own web and database design stuff, came back to support desk again, except this time I kind of knew how to fix all the things. So I was first, second and third line all by myself. And I absolutely love that. The reason I'm telling you this is because I got the chance to observe the way stuff was built, the way stuff was delivered, the way things were supported in the real world. I landed as a pre-sales consultant eventually, and by this time I wouldn't say I was a frustrated engineer, I was like a really optimistic engineer. What I could see out there in this world of tech was opportunities to do a lot of stuff a lot better. And I began to have a tendency of creating presentations that looked a bit like this. So, I'd look around myself and I'd see different teams not only not working together, but maybe not even respecting each other. Architects in an ivory tower. Sorry, architects, I absolutely love you. That was the reality that I was seeing. Each team using different configuration sets, each team testing stuff on, wondering why when stuff went live, it broke. Also, of course, different motivations between the teams, experts dismissing other experts, more senior people dismissing everything a more junior person had to say. But do you know what the biggest anti-pattern I was seeing was? And like I said, this is before I'd heard of DevOps, so we're getting to that bit. What I was seeing most of all was companies who essentially their entire driving force was tech. There was nothing that company could sell that wasn't created by its tech teams. Not only were those tech teams a little bit misunderstood, they were kind of treated not as a cherished heart of the company, but more like the most dangerous animal in the zoo. So, sort of poke them with a stick occasionally, give them a bit of whatever motivation, whatever remuneration they needed. But they were essentially treated as very other. So, as you can imagine, I did lots of presentation of how we could do this better, how we could work together better, how we could bring together things like governance and funding and ownership. So, one day I started talking to a colleague about maybe using a different tool, and he started drawing boxes and arrows that showed me how this tool worked. As he was explaining this particular tool, it was Octopus Deploy, he started telling me about the concepts behind it. He started using the word DevOps. And I was like, oh, that's what I've been talking about. This is exactly it. So that's why I'm passionate about it, and that is why I've come to stand here. But, so I came to this in about 2014. So obviously the State of DevOps surveys began, so I immediately filled one out, even though I didn't know what on earth it was about. I read the Phoenix Project like a thirsty person drinks a glass of water. And I read the State of DevOps reports that were already available, which was 2. And I got to go to DevOps Days London. So that was amazing. What did I see DevOps as? What was the Phoenix Project telling me? What were those first State of DevOps reports telling me? They were telling me that DevOps is an enterprise level thing. It's a whole organisation effort. So yeah, back to the me bit. I became a system build engineer, which was basically, with my new DevOps evangelism and knowledge, I was able to become assistant build engineer, which was basically a platform engineer embedded with dev teams, trying to do myself out of a job by helping them become more and more autonomous. As you'll all know, if you try to do yourself out of a job in this game, you get more jobs. So that was wonderful. Came to BJSS as a platform engineer, where my tiny, tiny mind was blown by how fantastic these teams were working and how these wonderful infrastructure as code and pipelines and everything just all being delivered together in a way that I eventually understood well enough to explain it to other people. And even though my mind was blown by it, it sort of informed everything I think of and do now. And then I became a DevOps Strategy Consultant, which is what I do now. So that's what I did before. So yeah, that's how I ended up here, and that is why I started thinking about DevOps as this. The minute I got into DevOps Strategy Advisory, I was, it was immediately something that we should be working together on. In our advisory world, that's why I've got these particular items written up here: strategy, culture, change, design, software, platform, data, quality, agile, AI, what's the one I've missed out? Op model. So you have to pull all these things together in order to create a true DevOps capability. So that's how we got here. So essentially, and I don't mean to miss out as well the 5 ideals for fans of the Unicorn project. Everything we do is about people, and something in the Unicorn project which is very, very dear to me and absolutely at the heart of this practice is focus, flow and joy. You point out to me any individual in an organisation at any level that couldn't use a bit of focus, flow and joy in their world, and you won't be able to. So essentially, and now I've got to remember what I was going to say about it. So we apply these lenses to all these different improvement areas. And what I'm seeing out there, obviously I've been doing this for 4 years now, this DevOps strategy thing. And what I'm seeing is there are elements of DevOps strategy going on. What it usually is very top down though. So DevOps is, of course, I know that Andy's going to talk at length about the evolution of DevOps later and all the sort of patterns, anti-patterns, how DevOps sort of started as a concept in the engineering. It became a label that we put on people and tools that meant that they had to do all the things themselves. And then it came to DevOps is dead. No, it's not. There's quite a lot of people who are doing fantastic things without ever mentioning the word DevOps, which I think is quite interesting. If anybody wants to debate with me what word we should use instead of DevOps, that would be really cool. I haven't found one yet, so I'm sticking with it. But what I'm seeing is things like, sort of, if you want to knit all layers of an organisation together with similar understanding and practices. So if you've got an organisation which is essentially a tech organisation, which is essentially a data organisation, does it think of itself as that? Does it understand enough about that data and tech to really leverage it, support it? And that, when people are doing something fantastic at that grassroots level, do you poke it with a stick and sort of give it what it needs but otherwise ignore it? Or do you embrace it, you propagate it, and you actually sort of take on the best of that yourself? So what I'm seeing a lot of is really good stuff around workflow requirements management, where a team can trace what it's delivering back all the way up to the vision and the strategy of the company. That's fantastic. A couple of clicks and they can see exactly why they're delivering that thing. What about the other way round? What can the more senior levels of the organisation learn from that grassroots? So, I'm just going to tell you a little bit now about what that means in practice for us. So, As a consultant at CGI, I get to work with lots of different organisations. One thing that's really very much my bread and butter is going in and doing an assess and recommend piece. That could be anything from 2 weeks. I actually did one in 5 days recently. Yes, I ended up doing it in more than 5 days because I just wanting to do something right. Of course, I put more than 5 days in on it, but it could be anything from a couple of weeks to perhaps 8 or 12 weeks, where we go in and we have a look at all the enablers for their success across the organisation. Now, it depends how much time we've got. We have created a really fantastic assessment framework, and we do sort of chop it down a little bit to suit each client and what their initial, what pain points they've initially come to us with. But it starts with all the most obvious DevOpsy things like the CI/CD, but it also includes the way things are funded, the way teams are incentivized. It looks at, how does strategy link to grassroots and vice versa. It looks at many different things. And I've just got on this slide a sort of image of like the high-level assessment framework with all the areas in boxes, and we give them all scores. Behind that, we've actually got a bit of prose about what 1 to 5 means for each of those boxes. Every time we go into a client, we learn something new, we update it. Every time a client lets us go into an extra little bit of their organisation and develop our practice even more, because it's a very emergent thing, this. So, we just keep developing. So if you're developing your own framework, do it. It's amazing. It's because then you can baseline every year and just have a look at what your progress is against it. There are some really good frameworks out there, but we can't just stick with the vanilla. We had to add lots of flavours to ours. Do talk to me about that if you'd like to know a little bit more about it. But yeah, one of the most powerful things that we do as well are value stream maps. I love doing value stream maps. Let me tell you a little bit about how I do them, which is perhaps a little bit different to the norm. And maybe it'll sort of show you how it's not just about a team delivering a thing. You can make it more about an enterprise. So say you've got a product team and you've invited them in and they're going to map everything they have to do from the moment someone has an idea about something to deliver to it realising real value for their customer. So we get them all in a room, virtually or physically, and they talk in depth about every single thing that they do. If we've got time, we look at what tooling they use to deliver each thing, and we look at their sub-processes and things like that. It can get very in-depth, but it's whatever suits that particular team. It's always very tailored. Then we look at all the places where there's blockers, where there's rework, where there's stuff being produced too quickly and therefore it's not being used yet. Say spinning up environments too quickly or too slowly, all sorts of all the different forms of waste. And then we come back, we go and have a cup of tea at that point because it gets a bit depressing. We've got a sort of, and you can kind of see at the top of this slide, I've sort of blurred it out a bit, but that's the sort of thing that the value stream looks like on a mural board after a while. We have all the sort of process steps in black and white. We slap on some red ones which are like, oh gosh, we're doing all these things wrong. Cup of tea, something to eat, go and have a cry in the corner. And then we come back and we put literally every single pink post-it on there has to have at least one green on it. What we're going to do about this. And we end up with this fantastic visualization of every single thing that needs to be done by this team right now to move them forward into a way of delivering that's going to suit them a lot better. What if, and it's not what if because I always try and insist on it, what if you have your finance director in that room? What if you have someone from HR in that room? What if you have your CTO in that room? Or CIO? Whoever it is that needs to really learn about what delivery looks like and how it should be enabled in a wider organisation, get them in there. Let them really see how the sausage is made. So yeah, anyway, when we've done our frameworks and our value streams, sometimes we do process maps. Spend 5 minutes with me and you'll know that I'm quite a generalist. I bring in really fantastic process analysts for that sort of stuff. Don't ever try and do everything yourself. I think that full stack engineer thing is, it's not fully a myth, but it's perhaps something that few would thrive doing that, let's say. So yeah, we make our recommendations, and we produce documentation at strategic levels and at practice levels, whatever levels that particular organisation needs. We come up with a change management approach, because how are we going to get that organisation to sort of move forward in the right way? How are we going to make that transformation stick and not immediately slide back again the minute we've gone back out the door? We leave them with the tools and the framework so that they can reassess themselves in the future. We give a bit of advice about how to make sure that if they're doing a self-assessment, how to make sure it's fully honest. How are people going to feel safe enough to be honest about where they are? We often do an agile refresh, so at that point I'll hand over to perhaps some of our agile coaches. It could be pattern standards and policies. It could be that when I create a lovely backlog for them, I would create it at quite a high level so that the engineering teams can find their own way through it. But then, we might bring in engineering teams from across our organisation to help them with that. So whatever they need support with, we put that in. So that's what we do at this stage. Why are we doing that? It's because we've got to start with creating understanding. Whatever happens, we need to make sure that everybody's not necessarily on the same page, not necessarily even agreeing that on the same chapter, but we've got to be reading the same chapter. It's got to be a start of at least understanding the sort of things we're trying to do. So, of course, that's just like where we start. So that's our first few weeks of this Enterprise DevOps transformation. What does that look like afterwards? So I'll just tell you a little bit about what some of, occasionally our clients do keep me a bit longer than that 8 to 12 weeks, and I get to deliver a thing, which is really good. I'll tell you about some of them. Because like I say, I often have to hand over to technical teams who take it away and do all the fun stuff that I kind of miss doing. But one of our major public sector organisations decided they wanted to create an automation centre of excellence as the first thing that they wanted to do to create an enterprise DevOps approach. Yes, that's only addressing one area, but that's the area they chose to start with, and that was excellent, because when you create a centre of excellence, you also create a community, and you create conversations, and you create the why are we doing this thing, So another organisation, which was in aviation, decided they wanted to have a full organisation knowledge sharing approach. So I got to work with them on that a little bit. Governance. So we've had a couple of organisations want us to create an entire end-to-end delivery playbook with lots of nice guardrails and stuff in it. So obviously that's been an absolutely fantastic thing to work on, because when it comes to governance, we've talked a little bit about, where are the boundaries for teams, for individuals, for AI tools. Boundaries are very important because they are your route to grow, and therefore you can have innovation off the back of that. People are safe to innovate and create because that's the wings to fly. That's the way I look at it anyway. A lot of our clients decide to do like a bit of an agile refresh, and we go all the way back to their team forming. We get them to create a new team charter, we get them to create a new product vision, all sorts of things like that. Just everything that they need to really, really start understanding their agile practices again and getting the most out of it, instead of doing a bit of zombie agile, following going through the motions. And yeah, of course, I've been honoured to hand over to some of our amazing change managers and management consultants to look at an organisation's entire culture. So what are they doing on this step of their journey? They are creating engagement and ownership based on that understanding that they created before, and they're going to be able to keep on with their enterprise DevOps transformation because they've picked something and they've gone for it. And that's it's a lesson that I think just applies to everybody. So I'll just go back one because I missed. What are we doing at CGI though? So we have got some amazing DevOps professionals here in CGI. What happened when I landed and started causing some trouble? They haven't kicked me out yet, you never know, watch this space. But what I decided to do is, because I just sort of landed, just started talking to people who were, finding other people who were talking about DevOps. And so I inserted myself into those conversations, whether they liked it or not. Luckily they liked it. And we decided that we were going to come together across every one of those capabilities in CGI world. And of course that requires sort of helping people understand why they should be interested. DevOps is an engineering thing, isn't it? What's that got to do with me? Was the most common response. But it doesn't take 2 seconds to get somebody to go, oh, yeah, okay. So we decided to collaborate, break down silos and continually improve. And we decided to base that on common understanding, knowledge and resources. And we're going to do that by creating some initial work streams. So people just flocked to this the minute we started talking about enterprise DevOps and like what DevOps could be for CGI. We want to help our clients be more DevOps, but we want to do it as well. We've got to eat our own dog food and, find this, it actually tastes quite nice. I won't use that analogy again. So yeah, we decided to create 5 work streams. They're probably quite self-explanatory, but for knowledge, we wanted to create a single place across all of CGI, across the whole globe, for shared knowledge standards and resources. Reusable assets, actually having a reusability mindset and having a flow of knowledge, or turning ideas and information into preserved and usable knowledge, embedding that into our delivery practices and, well, all our practices, not just delivery. So, obviously we don't want that just to be a static thing. We're going to create knowledge and sort of ways for people to cross-skill and upskill. Sort of just lift that knowledge and all those resources off the page, off the screen, actually into people's day-to-day lives. So we've got a learning work stream. We're creating our standards and policies, as I say. Those are our routes to grow. So we're creating, at this stage, a high-level living framework of policies and standards that people can pick up and use, apply on client, apply in their own world. Social and community, one of the things that people said most was, we've got all these great communities, they don't talk to each other. So a lot of that is about joining things up that already exist. There's so much good stuff in this organisation, it's been amazing, but we've got to just help to join it up a bit. So yeah, we're going to make sure, I think one of the key things that people wanted most was, I want to talk to somebody who feels the same as I do, who wants to talk about DevOps, who wants to talk about how to do stuff better. And I had one colleague in another office say to me, I don't know anybody in my office who talks like you do about this. I said, I know 3. I'll tell you who they are. That's another community just spun up there. So yeah, and of course we have to turn all this stuff into something that we can deliver. So we're creating propositions, and I think the most important thing we can do when we're creating propositions about what we can deliver for the outside world is about sort of raising aspirations about how good stuff can be, how much better we can be. Let's just sort of break that ceiling in our concepts of how DevOps can really help an organisation to be more effective and increase its flow. Because essentially everything we're doing is people working with people, building a thing for people. So the people are coming together to do it. That's that. Thank you.